Chevre, hello, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark und freilich begashmis beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically, spiritually. Today is Tes Tammuz, Erev Shabbos Kodesh, Parshas Chukas. For Chabad Chassidim, we're holding between very auspicious days of Gimel Tammuz, the Yom Elul of the Rebbe, and the upcoming Yom Tov of Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tammuz. Days suffused with the spirit and the forces and the energies of great, unparalleled tzaddikim. And we're going to speak today about the power of a tzaddik and miracles. Before we start, we'll begin with the posuk, a prayer, and we'll talk about miracles. We're going to say the posuk of Kapitel Kuf Lamed Vav, the posuk Daled. Li'oi sei niflois gedeles levadei, keli elam chazdei. To he who alone performs great wonders, for his kindness is forever. So over here, first of all, we could say that the emphasis is lo'oi sei. We have to remember that the greatest miracles are connected to the world of Asiyah, in the physical world. Even though you could say God's wondrous abilities are unfathomable, who knows wonders and miracles and feats that are totally beyond our being able to appreciate. But no, we say also that the fact that he created a world where he's hidden and at the same time he's totally at work, he's completely there, that itself is one of the greatest miracles. So that's the emphasis. Lo'osei, we're talking about how he's being active in this world, the physical world of Asiyah. And that's neflois gedolos, not just a plain miracle, it's great miracles. And Chassidus explains the meaning over here. Lo'osei neflois gedolos. It could be that the greatest miracles are which ones? The ones that are levadai, that only he knows about it. And Chassidus explains that those miracles are also connected to the level which is called levadai. Hu levadai vein zelosai. Not just plain oirein seif, a level of revelation, but they are connected to the essence of the Eibush himself, as the Alter Rebbe talks about the creation of the physical existence. Hu levadi hu b'koiche v'yicholte lahavis yesh ma'ayin. We need atzmus, the very highest level that could create an object that feels itself independent. We're not going to explain the explanations now, but that same hu levadi hu, which is connected to Lois, as we said before, the physical creation. That same level is the one which is working these miracles that only he knows about. So in this week's parsha, we have an amazing, amazing miracle which is not celebrated so much. And today, God was very nice to me. He gave me revelations. I'm actually so excited about it. I never realized this before. For some reason, you learn, and every year you have to learn it again, and you realize new things. So, the Pasuk talks about the miracle that happened, and the miracle was that there was as the Jews were traveling, they were in a certain borderline between certain territories, certain nations, and the Pasuk says like this, Al ken yeyomer b'sefer Melchames Hashem, es voy b'sufa, v'senacholim arnaim. This happened just like there was the miracle of Kriyas Yamsuf. There was a miracle that happened in the valleys of Arnon, where the Amorites wanted to do something terrible, as we'll soon see. And over here we see the Rashi compares, the Pasuk compares, the miracle that happened by the splitting of the Yamsuf, Kriyas Yamsuf, to the miracle that happened in this week's Parsha. And by both miracles it says, Oz Yoshir. So Rashi says, Kloimar Esa Sheyoiv Lehem, that there was many miracles in the Yamsuf, and then the next Rashi over there, Kishem shemesaprem b'nisei Yamsuf, kach shemesaprem b'nisei Nachlei Arnoin. Shav kan nasu nisim gdolim, u'mahi manisim. So over here also, actually, it seems that there's an obligation. We say Oz Yosha every single day, but over here it says Al ken yeomer, yeyomar, which seems that we should speak about it. So I feel that it's an obligation that we should speak about these miracles. So that's what we're going to do today. It's an instruction. We have to point it out and we have to speak about it and ponder it and think about it. And it says over here also, Nisim G'dolim, great miracles. Okay, now, then comes the miracle, which we'll talk about again, and then there's another whole point, which I realized this year, which I never saw before, and I don't know why I didn't think about it. So first of all, what was the miracle? There were enemies. They were standing on two mountains, and one mountain had pieces that were sticking out, like protruding, and the other one had caves. So the enemy was standing on top of the mountains, ready to ambush the Jews from on high, throw rocks at them, etc. As Rashi describes the whole miracle. And what Hashem made was that as right before the Jews were going there, the two mountains joined, and the pieces that were protruding from this side of the mountain went into the caves of the other side of the mountain, where the enemies were waiting to make an ambush. They crushed all those enemies. They weren't able to make an ambush, and the blood flowed. And this is what it means over here, that Oz Yosher Shashira Zois Ale Be'er Enullah, Ali Be'er Enullah, because it was from the well that usually water flows. This time the well showed that there were bones, crushed bones and blood, as Rashi brings it out. And because they saw all these crushed bones and blood, pulverized bodies, they realized the miracle that Hashem had made, etc. So, first of all, let us point out that this is the common denominator between the two miracles. What is the common denominator? Miracles. But the point is to bring out the general subject. There's two types of miracles you should know. There's one miracle where it's revealed in a revealed way, and it's obvious and explicit. And that's Yamsuf, Kriyas Yamsuf, where we say, it says there was a great divine revelation. And they reached greatest levels of intimacy with God. Masharah, the children at the Yamsuf, later, the greatest prophets later. So by Kriyas Yamsuf, we're talking about both. The level of the miracle was astonishing, outstanding, startling, wow, 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 in a revealed way. And also the level of divinity that was revealed then was also unbelievable. Never to be matched. Even later on. So much so that we say that the prophets of later don't reach the level of the children. That level of Zeh. The Nevi'im only reach the level of Koy Omar Hashem. Koy means, so did God say. They don't have 100% clear HD vision. But if you say Zeh, that means it's completely clear. This, not like this. Koy means like this. Koy Omar Hashem. But if you say Zeh, that means you point to it with the finger. It's sharp and clear, 100%. So that was Kriyas Yamsuf. But you know what? This itself is the lesson. Just like over there we say Az Yoshir. Say Az Yoshir here too. And we're still calling it Nisim G'dolim. And in a certain sense, as we explained before, it's a miracle that only He knows about. Rashi over here says that the Eibusha decided to tell us. But the truth, and how did we find out about it? Only because of the well. But for the same money, it could have been, like you have all these slapstick comedy skits. There's 10 people trying to assassinate you. You don't even know about it. And they stumble and they fall and they, like we have these stories in the news sometimes where these terrorists blow themselves up. These stories happen. So we don't know about it. And we find out about it later. But over here, this is the message. The Eibusha decided to show it to us. So we should celebrate, we should come to joy, because it brings us to joy. Miracles bring us to joy, because you see how the Eibusha goes out of his way and changes nature, etc., etc. But what's the lesson? That's the lesson, that in general, you should know. There's two types of miracles. There's a miracle of Kriyas Yamsuf, Nisim Gluyim, and then there's miracles that are not necessarily Nisim Gluyim. In this case, it was Nisim Gluyim, because you had to change nature. The mountains had to move. But it's the point that it could very well have been that you wouldn't know about it at all. It so happened to be that the Eibishter in his kindness decided to let you know. Guess what? The Eibishter can show you things that you have no idea, miracles that are happening to you. In the same way like that miracle that happened over there with the mountains. So that's the lesson, the first lesson. Number one, we have to look at the Nisim that are not Nisim Gluyim, i.e. over here I'm defining not Nisim Gluyim, that you don't even know about it. You have to see that they could be Nisim G'dolim, they could be big miracles. Celebrate. Try to keep your eyes open to celebrate the miracles that you don't know about and try to know about them, etc. And be sure that even if you don't know about them, there's miracles that are happening. So that's one thing. Now I'm coming to the revelation that I never had before. Rashi says over here, later, where it says B'mechaykik, Moshe is called Mechaykik, the lawgiver. V'lama lo niskar shmoi shel Moshe v'shira zu. It says Oz Yoshe Yisrael. It doesn't say Oz Yoshe Moshe uvnei Yisrael like it says B'kiyas Yamsuf. Why doesn't it mention Moshe's name? L'fi shalok al yidei ha'be'er. Because he got into trouble, he got punished because of the well, because he hit the rock. V'kivan shelo niskar shmoi shel Moshe. Because Moshe's name is not mentioned, Hashem's name is not mentioned. Imagine a king who's invited to a party, to a meal. Omar, he says, if my friend is there, the one I love, then I'll come. But if he's not there, I'm not coming. Wow, this is astounding. Because in the mashal, when the king says that he was invited to a suda, that means there's a king. Someone else is inviting him to a meal. The king says, if my friend is there, good. If my friend wasn't invited, then I'm not coming. But over here, who's the one who punishes Moshe because of the stone? Because of the bear, sorry. Who's the one who causes Moshe to be punished? Hashem. So he himself is the one who's behind the fact that Moshe is not invited, so to speak. So now Hashem says, because he's not invited, I'm not there. So this proves how awesome the tzaddik, Hadoyer, the Nasi Hadoyer is. However you can explain that Moshe made a mistake, but still Hashem is saying, because Moshe's involvement in this shira is not as strong as the other time, therefore my name is not mentioned also. Wow. Unbelievable. So, that means that this level miracle is taka a lower level miracle. Just like I said before about the level of divinity, that over there was Rasa Shivcha Layam, Mashalei Ra, G'delim Shebenevim later. The reason over here it's like that, it wasn't such a divine revelation, is because Moshe is not involved. Therefore Hashem is not there, so to speak, in a revealed way, like he was over there in the story of Kriyas Yamsuf. And here we have a tremendous, tremendous lesson about a tzaddik. Think about it. Why do we have to mix in Bechlal that Moshe's name is not mentioned? In other words, to make a big deal about it, that his name is not mentioned like it was mentioned over there. Is that the focal point? We're talking about God. He makes a miracle. Thank God he made a miracle. No. The fact that Moshe's name is not mentioned here, of course, a question on Pshut Shel Mikra level, because Moshe's name was mentioned there by Kriyas Yamsuf. But let's now think about it. We're concentrating on this point that Moshe's name is not mentioned here, and therefore it's diminished. The miracle here is of a lesser grade because Moshe's name is not mentioned here. And wow, because Moshe's name is not mentioned here, Hashem's name is not mentioned here. Because if Moshe is not a part of it, then the level of divinity is lessened. And this tells you what the idea of Moshe Rabbeinu is. Anochi oimid beinechem ubein Hashem alikechem. Moshe is the Memutz HaMechaber. Without the Memutz HaMechaber, there's something lacking in the Chibur, the Dakos. And this Rashi proves it. Think about this Rashi. And the lesson we have to think about, in the days that we just came from Gimel Tammuz, and now we're coming to Yud Beis Tammuz, to reach the highest level of miracles, to reach greater levels of intimacy and knowledge of Hashem. It's only through the Tzaddik Hador, and being connected to a Tzaddik, and being connected to a Moshe. This Rashi proves it in a very powerful way. There's a story. One second. And this is the connection to Pirkei Avos this week. Pirkei Avos, Perikei, Mishnah Dalet, it says, Asora nisim nasol aviseinu b'Mitzrayim. 10 miracles happened to our forefathers in Egypt. V'asora alayom. And 10 miracles happened by Kriyas Yamsuf. This week's parasha talks about Kriyas Yamsuf and the miracles of Kriyas Yamsuf. So we have the message again, miracles. And the message of miracles is that we have to see and think about Hamachadish B'Tuli B'chol Yom Tamid Ma'aseh Bereishis V'al Nisachas Sheb'chol Yom Imanu. I'm talking to myself now. There's no question about it. If I really concentrate on the words of Moedem Anachnu Loch and the Birchas HaShachar and other things, with the point, the message, the lesson will be imparted and engraved in us deeper and deeper. How we have to be grateful to Hashem because of the wonderful, great miracles that are happening to each and every single one of us every single day. There's no question about it. Yud Beis Tammuz is the day, it's a yontif, that the Frierdiker Rebbe was released from his arrest completely. The miracles of Yud Beis Tammuz is obvious, it's mind-boggling. I strongly urge all of you to read about it. You'll be inspired like no other story. There's a book called The Heroic Struggle, where it's written clearly in a chronological order. And the point the Rebbe would make many times was that the message of the story of Yud Beis Tammuz is how one man, the Frierdiker Rebbe, could stand up, truth to power, against a superpower. And when you think about what the Frierdiker Rebbe was doing, running an underground network across a country, wide, in every small village, in every small town, there was a mikveh, there was a cheder. It's all the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he's communicating, corresponding with them, all in code language. And he knows what's going on in every single place. And we really even didn't see the degree of the miracle until the Soviet Union crumbled in 1990. Then we really began to appreciate how everything that the Frierdiker Rebbe invested all those years through self-sacrifice, Mesiras Nefesh, by standing firm and strong in his principles, later showed fruit. There's a video from Gem. It's called Embers, and I love the name Embers because that's exactly what the point is. That these embers of the coal, so to speak, was burning the whole time, even during the worst years of communism. Even after the Frierdiker Rebbe left the country in 1927, later after Simchas Torah, he went out of his arrest. He became a free man. Yud Beis Tammuz, Yud Gimel Tammuz, and then he left after Simchas Torah because the pressure of the government, it was known that they were going to try to harm him unofficially, so it was dangerous. But nevertheless, his Chassidim continued waging the war to continue keeping Judaism, Yiddishkeit alive. And therefore, afterwards, whoever knows the history, later, when the Soviet Union crumbled, and it was allowed again, Perestroika, whatever it's called, I forgot what the other word, and then yeshivas were able to be built up again, and shuls and all that. It was all because of the embers, because of the fruits, because of the seeds that the Frierdiker Rebbe had planted and all his chassidim for decades and decades. So again, what is the message of Yud Beis Tammuz? How one man, a tzaddik, could face up against a superpower and be victorious. And that's the lesson we have to take in our lives. Mesiras Nefesh means to bend for Hashem, to do sometimes something which is not convenient, but not to budge 1 inch when it comes to the principles of Yiddishkeit. Talking about the influence of the tzaddik, there's a story, I'm not sure if I said it in this platform. We're speaking already for more than 2 years. But this story is one of my favorite stories, one of the most amazing stories. It's a story of the Frierdiker Rebbe. After he came to America, he landed in American Tes Oder, Purim, which is just 5 days later, he said that the 12th of Tishrei that year, he landed in America in 1940. September 1939 was when the war broke out and the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, bombed Warsaw, and the Frierdiker Rebbe was there as the bombs fell. And he writes that the 12th of Tishrei is noted in my memory as one of the most difficult days that I've ever experienced. I'm going to read now in English from the Sikh of Purim Tov Shin. A couple of days after he landed in America, he found it important to relate this story because it talks about the spirit of a Jew. So he's describing what happened that day in 1939, which is just a couple of months before he tells over the story. The 12th of Tishrei, which he calls one of the most difficult days of his life, bombs were falling. And he was in a cellar, and the cellar was shaken up, fires broke out immediately, multi-story buildings collapsed, they buried their inhabitants in the debris. I'm skipping paragraphs. The picture we saw, a street of buildings all ablaze, the shrieks of the unfortunate people who were being burned, the screams of alarmed townsfolk, especially of children, women, and old folk, is indescribable. As the bombardment grew more intense from one minute to the next, more and more streets of houses went up in flames. Clusters of smoking black clouds burst out of the windows and obstructed the light of what happened to be a fine sunny day. For a few hours, we and several other people ran, afraid and exhausted, from one shelter to another. So now the Frierdiker Rebbe is in a certain shelter, like a bomb shelter, and he says, a few hundred people of various hues had assembled, Jews with long coats and beards and payas, and women wearing wigs, clean-shaven Jews, and women who spoke only Polish, all stood there, cowed and vexed. Basically, he's trying to say there were Jews of all walks of life, observant and totally non-observant. And then he says, suddenly, there was a fearsome blast. A bomb exploded near our group. A river of fire immediately gushed forth. Every one of us saw death before his eyes. And at that very moment, everyone cried out in one voice, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Everyone was certain that this was the last minute of his life. Such a Shema Yisrael, cried out from the depth of the hearts of such varied people, with such a wide range of philosophies, I have never heard. And I ask Hashem that this recollection should be preserved in my memory forever. So the Frierdiker Rebbe says he does not want to forget this image and this day forever. And then he says that we saw divine providence in every step of the way, witnessing so manifestly how powerfully and how profoundly a belief in God is rooted in the heart of a Jew. That is the good that I learned from the midst of the evil. The faith that surfaced in that universal outcry of Shema Yisrael opened up for me new wellsprings of love and reverence for the Jewish sons and daughters, whoever they may be. So here we see the Frierdiker Rebbe describing how that cry of Shema Yisrael that was revealed when the bomb exploded was a revelation of the essence of every single Jew. No matter what they look like on the outside, Am Yisrael Chai. Every Jew essentially is connected to Hashem. And that's why that came out. But then the Rebbe, in a Sikha, in Chelik Beis, Chukas, the Rebbe writes the following. As Ken Afilu Zayin, Adisibe was in Shema Yisrael. What brought that out in them? When you read the story, you think that it was the bomb, that they felt death at that moment. Who knew? But the Rebbe, in Chukas to the Frierdiker Rebbe, says that who knows, it could be that the Frierdiker Rebbe being in their midst facilitated the revelation of the neshama. Yes, It was their essence that came out, but it wasn't only the bomb that brought out the neshama. It was the fact that they were in the presence of the Friedrich Rebbe. Es kann a viel sein, dass die Sibbe, was sie ausgeschehen, Shema Yisrael gewähnt, mit Zadem, was sie haben sich gefunden in die Dalle Dames von den Neshama Klolis, was sie seinen gewähnt Perotten von ihr. I wouldn't say this myself, but this is what the Rebbe writes in Lekutei Sichos, Chelik Beis, page 334. That the reason why they cried out Shema Yisrael was because they were in the Dalet Amis of the Neshama Klolos, the general soul of the Jews, the Friedrich Rebbe, which every Jew is an extension, a detail from that root source. Aber das ist das Sibbe, was es ma'eilig gewinnt, sehr yichide. Obviously, it brought up their essence. Every Jew has that essence. It was a moment of revelation of the essence of every one of them, but being in the presence of the Friedrich Rebbe brought it out even more. So the same thing we could say concerning our story over here. Oz Yoshi Yisrael! Since Moshe's involvement in this case is of a lower level, of course Moshe also sang. Because if we say Yisrael, Moshe is there, no question about it. But it wasn't the same like it was by Kriyas Yamsuf. However, exactly, I'm not sure. But there's no question about it. It wasn't exactly the same. Because Moshe's name is not mentioned here, and Hashem's name is not mentioned here. And over here we see again, by the Rebbe pointing out, that it was Moshe, the Friedrich Rebbe that was there, that facilitated and brought it even more by the rest of the people. So the lesson we take from this all is to reinforce and strengthen our connection to the Rebbe, and this will bring out our koyach of Mesiras Nefesh to withstand adversity and triumph over all sorts of obstructions and difficulties and challenges that we face in our life. And the Rebbe should help that from this Chag HaGeula with Beis with Gimel Tammuz, we should come to the ultimate Geula of the Geula Mitzvah Shleima, take it from Yad Mamish, posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.